Hi folks, sorry if there's like wind background, there's a blizzard going on. Today I thought I'd talk to you about how I prep for sessions. So this is how I prep as a GM. Right now I'm running a homebrew campaign. I have previously done one session of the starter set. For that, it was just sitting down and reading it and getting familiar with it. But for this homebrew campaign, I have figured out kind of the big picture what's going on in the world, and then I know where I'm headed to, kind of where the end of the first chapter is, and then I have ideas for each chapter after that. Well, I'll just see once we get to the end of the first chapter where we go from there, because it's going to depend on what my players do. So I haven't necessarily plotted out each session in that chapter. I knew a couple of milestones that I needed to get to. The first one was getting my players to the mine and getting them to discover the fun mystery of like, hey, this is really what you're here to do. So those were, I actually had figured those would be in the first, all in the same session. It ended up being that that was spread over 2 sessions, which worked out fine. So usually what I do is I sit down and I do most of my prep on a Word doc. I keep track, that's how I keep track of most of it. Sometimes I'll jot down notes. I did buy a notebook planning to use that as my campaign notebook and just kind of haven't really used it. Because having the flexibility of the Word doc, I can move stuff around a lot more easily. I'd be interested to know, because I do kind of think better pen to paper, but I like the flexibility of being able to move stuff. So maybe if I move to a 3-ring binder rather than like a Moleskine, it would work better, but I don't know. I know there are some like systems out there for actually like planning out your campaign and writing it down in a notebook. And I'd love to try those out as well, but this is what's working for me right now. So I'll sit down in front of my computer, open up the Word document that has everything for my campaign. So the start of the document is all the stuff that I sent to the players, all the stuff you need to know, making your character, like what races are common and what level you're going to start at and stuff like that. And then also gave some basic setting information, so like history of the world. I also had a breakdown of the pantheon in this specific area of the world. So after that, I have a section that is just for me, that is kind of the notes for the bigger picture of what's going on in the world. Some of that stuff that my players might find out, some they might not. It kind of depends on what they do. And then I started planning each session. And the first thing I kind of figure out is, what is the overarching goal for this session? So I like to have kind of clear milestones for them to at least try and give them hints of like, go this way, follow this. A couple times they haven't, that's fine. I've had a few things up my sleeve to get them back on track. And then I usually break it down into kind of 3 acts and then decide which act is going to be what. So is it a social encounter? Is it a combat encounter? Is it exploration? And there can be multiple things in a single act, but kind of the like, so for example, the first session, the first act was essentially players getting to know each other, and the earthquake happened and they get tasked with going to the mine. That was the first act. The second act was meeting another of the characters. There was a small encounter there on the way to the mine, and then arriving at the mine and discovering what's going on. The third act was the biggest, and that was the encounter at the mine, rescuing the miners, and then deciding what to do next. And then it ended with kind of the decision of I had a couple of options for if they went one way or if they went the other way. I kind of knew basic overview of the kind of teaser that I was going to give for the next session. Because I like to try and wrap up the session so that it feels like, hey, my players accomplished something, and not leave it on too much of a cliffhanger, but have a little bit of a tease of like, something's coming, so that people are excited for the next session. So from there, I usually look at and figure out breaking down the individual encounters. For combat encounters, because I have a different varying number of players, depending on who can make which session. I don't plan those out until I have a good idea of how many people are going to be there each session. Once I know that, I'll do adding up all the XP and that math stuff, and from there figure out what is a good fit for the monster or NPC for them to have the combat with. Usually I have a basic idea of like, I would like this to be an elemental of some kind, or I want them to run into some kobolds. But I don't figure out exact numbers or the, you know, if it's one big monster, I usually don't figure out that until I know how many players there are, so I'm not like, hey, I just threw something at you that you should really have like 5 people here, but there are only 3 of you, so now you're gonna die. But then if it's a trap, I'll figure out the details for the trap and have that information. And I try and put everything in this document, so I have it all to reference if I need it. The first couple times I didn't put everything in, and it meant flipping through back and forth through pages, and I've just found it much easier if I have one main thing to reference. One of the nice things I like about having it all in a document, and I oftentimes have my computer with me while I'm running it, is that I can add into the document as I need to. So, oh hey, they asked about a name of something that I hadn't named. I pulled up a name on a fantasy name generator, and I can write that in, and then later on if they run into that character again, I can go back and reference it and it's there. So I like having it all together and not breaking it into separate documents. And then I usually have some notes as far as writing out descriptions of important things, figuring out like if they're going to find treasure or stuff like that, what that's going to be. Also having a few alternate scenarios. If the players manage to avoid this combat encounter, this is what's going to happen. Or if they capture somebody instead of killing them, here's the information that they might get for it, so that I have some basic notes to guide me in the moment, so that I'm not trying to sit there and remember like, oh shoot, what was it? Or trying to come up with something on the spot. I have something that ties in, because I've come up with things on the spot, and that's an important skill to have, but I like to try and plan as much as I can so that it flows in the story. So this is getting fairly long, so I'm probably going to break this into 2 videos and talk to you in the next video about kind of what my day of prep is, what I do to get ready for the campaign, like setting stuff out at the table and all of that. So I hope that was helpful for you, and if you have any alternate ways that you get ready or keep notes or stuff like that, let's talk about it down below. You know, I'm still starting out. I'm sure there are plenty of other ways to do it, and some of it might actually work better for me, but this is so far what I found that works, and I figured I'd tell you guys about it in case it sparks an idea for you, or you hear something and go, oh hey, that sounds really cool. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!